Good morning. Thank you everybody for joining our webinar today, KPI Dashboards Made Easy. My name is Tucker Johnson, Managing Director of NIMSY Insights. And a few house cleaning items before we get started here. Today is all about learning empowerment and learning how we can easily create something that might seem a little bit overwhelming at first. If you take nothing away from this webinar today, I want you to take away this idea that I can do this. It's not as difficult as maybe it seems it could be. If you're joining us live on one of the many platforms that we're streaming on, then you can, if you have questions throughout this process, please go ahead and leave those questions in the comment sections. While you're joining us, feel free to like and subscribe to our various pages and channels that you're tuning into. And just FYI, I'm flying completely solo today, so please bear with me as I go through the technical transitions. I'm not only presenting this webinar, I'm running all the technical behind the scenes, and I do have some support on our social channels. Sandra will be collecting the comments and the questions from you guys today. So a little bit, just to get started, about myself here. As I mentioned, my name is Tucker Johnson. I am currently the Managing Director of NIMSY Insights. And a little bit about my experience, just to qualify myself here. I have about a decade of experience, mostly on, or pretty much exclusively on, the language services provider, the LSP side. A lot of my time spent on that side has been working on large-scale localization programs with large clients. I based here in Seattle, so a lot of the big clients, which you can imagine, that are based here in Seattle, I've worked on. I co-founded NIMSY Insights, where I'm currently at with my partner Renato Beninato. And we've been going here in 2018. We've just gotten started. We're going strong, and it's been a lot of fun because we basically, it's our job now to learn and to research and to share that knowledge with other people in the industry, which we're very excited about. A little bit more about myself, though, is that I want to make it very clear. I want to make a point that I'm not technical. I am not, I don't come from an engineering background or a development background. My background is strictly project management and program management, account management. I'm not certified in PMP, in Scrum, Six Sigma. I can't code. I can fake my way around some HTML, but that's about it. And the reason I want to bring this up is because what I'm going to be showing you today, I want you to take away from this that if this guy can do it, I can do it. So if Tucker, who doesn't come from a technical background and doesn't have this experience, can do all of these things, then certainly it's something that I can do as well. Today's goals are pretty simple. We want to, I basically want to show you and empower you how to create really nice looking, attractive, and meaningful data visualizations that you can share with your stakeholders, either your internal stakeholders, your external stakeholders, which would be your clients, your vendors, with data that helps you and your vendors and your clients make better business decisions. Now, this data can be collected from various sources, as we're going to see. For the sake of this webinar, we're going to focus on one source in particular, because it would be a whole series of webinars if we wanted to go into everything. But it's going to give you a good picture of what can be done with the data sources that you have. And to start off, we're going to start talking about how to collect and maintain and store data. And we're going to use the age-old example of the tracking sheet. Now, this might not be very popular. Tracking sheets are not officially in style anymore because there's all these cool new tools that track information and project status in real time directly in the tool. But in my experience, and the experience of others that I've witnessed a lot, is that none of these have fully replaced the tracking sheet. Even if folks are using a really great TMS that has great tracking and reporting abilities, somewhere in the back end, it's not uncommon to see a project manager or a localization engineer using a tracking sheet to track the information themselves. So we're going to start off with that. And then we're going to move on to how do we turn that tracking sheet, that information that we're tracking, into a beautiful data visualization that can be shared with folks. And that's the exciting part of this. And the sharing is going to be very quick. I want to show how you can post this in different formats so that it can be accessed by multiple people. Now, today's webinar is going to be a little bit different than a typical webinar. We're not going to be, I'm not going to show you just a bunch of slides. I don't have a 50 slide deck that I'm going to go through. I want it to be very hands-on, so to speak. So I'm going to switch over and I'm actually going to show you this process and we're going to walk through it hand in hand, side by side, and you can see actually how this is done in real time. So with that, it is demo time, and I will just switch on over here. Awesome. And I believe everybody can see my screen. I have an Excel sheet or a Google sheet open here, and before we get started, this is just a basic template that I put together ahead of time. Before we get started, I want to talk about spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are a very, very, very powerful tool. And I'm going to say it multiple times, so get ready. I'm going to say it multiple times in this webinar that one of the best things that any project manager, program manager, account manager, doesn't matter who you are, one of the best things you can do for yourself is teach yourself how to use Excel. And when I say learn how to use Excel, I mean really, really learn, go deep. Learn how to use some complex formulas, conditional formatting, data visualization. If you're feeling particularly ambitious, learn how to create some macros and some automation in Excel. It's a very powerful tool. And this, what I have here today, is not an Excel sheet. As you can see, it is a Google sheet. And I'm an Excel guy, I'm a Microsoft guy, I'm here in Seattle, and I resisted transitioning to Google for a very long time. Now we've set up Nimdzi, and I've set Nimdzi up all on the G Suite, the Google ecosystem. So it was a little bit of a scary transition for me because I've been using Microsoft my whole life. If that's you, you are intimidated by Google Docs and Google Sheets because you've been using Word and Microsoft Excel and all these other options out there, I want to tell you it's not that bad. It's a pretty seamless transition. And what I found is Google Sheets can do pretty much everything that Excel can, especially now that they have a record macro function, but we're not going to get into that. And even some more stuff that Excel can't. So I encourage you to make the transition. Okay, so what we have here is the basic outline of a tracking sheet. And this is a project status, handoff, handback tracking sheet. So this is something that I would use if I'm managing projects to track the status of projects. Now, you see I've already filled it out here, but I want to talk about before you create a tracking sheet, what you really need to do is ask yourself the question, what data do I want to track? What data do I need to track? And also put yourselves in the shoes of your stakeholders, either your clients or your vendors, and think what data would be useful for them to see or to have access to. Because I'm not a proponent of tracking data just for the sake of tracking data. I'm a big proponent of tracking data that's going to help me as a manager make better business decisions, or that's going to help my clients make better business decisions. And if it's not something that's going to help me make better decisions as a manager, then do I really need to track it? Because there's always a cost to tracking and maintaining data, in that either it's manually inputted or someone has to create an automation to fill it out if it's not manually inputted. So really ask yourself that question. So for this, I wanted to be able to track the number of words, so the volumes of the handoffs. I wanted to be able to track the finances, so I have the rates column, the costs column over here, and I wanted to be able to track on-time deliveries. So I have the handoff date, hand back date, so the scheduled when it's supposed to be handed back, and when it was actually handed back. Now, I also need to think what components, what dimensions do I want to be able to filter this data by? Do I want to be able to understand the cost by language, by project type, by individual project? And I need to add each of those in here too. So for this simple spreadsheet, I've added content type. As an example, we're going to use two, marketing and UI. So two types of content. I've added language and I've added project name. So another thing I want to mention is that in this type of spreadsheet, this type of tracking sheet that I've used in the past, each row is for a separate language. So if we have a handoff, let's say sample handoff, and this is going to be I'm typing here, marketing project, it's going to be Spanish, and it's going to be 200 words, and I can go down the list here. And if this handoff also includes French, then I'm actually going to create a separate line for this. Handoff. So same project name, same content type, and French. Maybe French is 205 words. Why? It seems like common perception would be use one row for one handoff and have multiple languages. And it's a very simple answer, because this is going to be an easier format for my data visualization tools to read and to understand. And if I really want to be able to slice and dice the data in all the ways that I want to be able to slice and dice it, this is the best way. So a couple things here I want to go through here, just some really quick best practices when putting together an Excel sheet. And then I want to move on to the fun stuff, which is the data visualization. So first of all, you'll see here, and I'll be honest, I did this on purpose, I misspelled Spanish. So this is a big problem with tracking sheets, especially if they're shared sheets that are being modified and updated by multiple different people. Is that if I put Spanish in here and it's spelled wrong, then when I visualize that, it's not going to understand that that's Spanish. It's going to understand it as Spanse, which is different from Spanish. So that's going to throw everything off. So the first thing I want to talk about is these data validation rules. Very simple, very powerful things, though, that you can do. And this can be done in Excel, it can be done in Google Sheets. So I want to limit this language field to only 4 possible options. And I want to create a drop-down to select from that. So what I can do here is I'm going to remove both of these languages, delete that for now. I'm going to pick my languages. I actually already have these languages over here in this price sheet tab. You see here I've created this price sheet. We're going to use this for another reason too. And I have my list of languages right here. So when I go back here, I'm going to go to my data. It's the same in Excel, data field, and I'm going to drag down to data validation. And I want to use a list from a range. It's the same option in Excel. And for that range, I'm going to simply select from my price sheet here these 4 cells. And you see it fills in the price sheet. It picks the right tab and everything. And if someone enters something wrong, I can either show a warning or I can reject the input. I'm just going to reject the input because I don't want anything wrong in there. And I'm going to hit save. So now you'll see when we go back here, I have this cool little drop down that has my list of languages. And what this is going to do is going to pretend it's going to protect my data. The point of this is making this as idiot-proof as possible. And as you can see, I just drug that down so that it's in multiple rows. And if I go in there and I try to enter a language that's not in there, let's say Dutch. Oh, I get an error message. So it's really going to protect my data in a way that's very important when it comes to visualizing it. Always, if you can idiot-proof it against yourself, against anybody else who's touching the spreadsheet, always, 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 always do it. I'm not going to get into it right now, but another very powerful thing to do is to use the protect cells function. If there's cells, particularly with formulas in them, that you don't want people touching, then use the protect sheet and put a password on it so that people can't modify those cells, so that you can't modify those cells. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is this rate column here. Now, I could go in and fill in this rate manually, but remember, you want to remove as many manual steps from the process as possible for two reasons. Because the more manual steps you have, the more time it takes a human being, which is not an efficient use of humans' time. And also, the more manual entries, data entries that you have, the more likelihood that someone's going to introduce an error. So I want to create a formula that automatically pulls this rate based upon the language, because I have that information over here in my price sheet tab. So let me put these languages back in here, French and German. We'll use French and German. And this is, it's called a VLOOKUP formula. And one of the best formulas that a project manager can learn, if you're, remember when I said learn how to use Excel, start with the VLOOKUP formula. There are other more complex options out there that solve the same thing, but this is simple to get your head around. So I'm going to use equals VLOOKUP, open parentheses. The first field is I want to see which field, which value I want to look up. So I want to look up that. I want this to look up the French language, comma. The next one is where is it going to look this data up from? And it's going to look it up from my price sheet tab. I told you we were going to go back to this. And I want to look up from these rows or these columns here. And it's going to automatically look in the first column here for French, and then it's going to return a value from the rest of the column, or from the other columns. So I put comma into my formula here, and now I'm going to put the number of the column which it's going to return the value from. And it's column 2, because language is column 1, per word is column 2. Comma. And this last one is a true or false value. And the difference is I always put false. The difference is, does it look up, when it's looking for the value, does it look up approximate matches or only exact matches? And I want only exact matches. That's why we have that data validation in place. You don't want approximate matches because Brazilian Portuguese or PTBR, PTPT are very similar, and it might pull the wrong information. So I'm going to put false. And I close my parentheses. Now I'm going to hit enter. And so you see my formula is automatically pulling 20 cents. And if I just paste that down, it's going to pull the correct information for other columns here. And let's just add one more row here for illustrative purposes. We're going to change this to Spanish. And see it's pulling a different value for Spanish. So very, very interesting, very powerful. I can then go over here to costs, and I can show the full cost for this by using a much, much, much simpler formula. Equals rate times words and parentheses. Whoops, I forgot a parentheses here. I don't even know why I added parentheses to begin with. And once again, why am I using a formula? And I might want to protect these cells to protect that formula. I'm using a formula here because the fewer manual cells you can fill in, the better. You want to have as many formulas as possible. Um, Another note here before we move on to the next thing that I want to look at is perhaps you're getting this data, word counts or languages or content type. Perhaps you're getting this data, if you're maintaining this tracking sheet, from a different source. So a common source would be a log file, a word count file exported from TM or TMS. So let's say I'm using Trados and I run the word count analyses and it gives me a CSV file with particular columns. I'm going to, if that's the case, I'm going to set up my tracking sheet in a way that mirrors that. Why? Because then I can very simply copy the whole table out from my CSV, which is exported from Trados, and I can paste it into here. If I want to get really fancy, then I create a macro or a script that can automatically pull that data into an Excel sheet, and I don't even have to do anything. Maybe I click a button to run the macro. That's outside the scope of this webinar today, though. Another thing you'll notice is I have these cells formatted in a certain way. So these are formatted as currency cells, as is this column over here. These handoff dates, I want to make sure that these are date formatted in Sheets. I can do that simply here from my menu bar, and I can select date. And one reason it's important to format everything correctly is because when you pull this into your data visualization tool, then it needs to know what type of data it is. And if you format it as a date, it's going to help your data visualization tool better understand. Remember, machines are smart, but machines are also very stupid. So you have to kind of spoon feed them and make sure that everything is, the data is clean for them. So far we've talked about VLOOKUP formulas, learn how to use them, make sure your cells are formatted correctly, use formulas wherever possible, as little manual input as possible. Now, rather than filling out the rest of this spreadsheet, I'm actually going to go over here to the spreadsheet that I've already filled out before this webinar. It's like one of those cooking shows where they put it in the oven and then they say, oh, and here's one over here that's already completed. That's what this is. So I've already filled this out. I've got my project name over here. Each project is either marketing or UI. I've got my languages, my words, my rates are automatically being pulled from the rate sheet tab. My handoff dates, these are manually entered. So that's going to be a pain for the project manager. If there's a way to automatically pull that data from a TMS export or something, that's definitely something to look into. Over here, I have the actual handback date and the on time. For the on time, I used another formula, which if there's a second formula, or maybe a formula you should actually learn before VLOOKUP, it's the if formula. So what I've used here is if the actual handback date was after the scheduled handback date, then it's late. Or if it's not, then it's on time. So 1 and 0 for late. You can see this one is here. Another thing that's very cool to use, and I don't have it set up here, is conditional formatting. And what conditional formatting would allow me to do is, for example, highlight if this handback date is after the scheduled handback date, I could highlight this row as red, which would give me a very clear understanding. This is very conditional formatting. If you spend a lot of time in tracking sheets, is very important in large tracking sheets because there's so much data. You want a way to easily visually identify where your problem areas are. And if that's a problem area, I want it highlighted red. I can do that with conditional formatting. So that's about the scope. I could talk about tracking sheets for a long time, but that's about the scope of what we need to cover today in order to get into the next step, which is how do I visualize this data. This is a handoff handback, like project status tracking sheet and a financial tracking sheet. It's a combination. This is very simple though. You can have many different columns, different ways to slice and dice the data in here. You could also have LQA quality data. If you're running an LQA program and you have the different types of errors and severities and error types, that can all go into a tracking sheet or a separate tracking sheet, the same tracking sheet. So really the sky's the limit. The idea here is you need to get the data into an organized manner and make sure that it's clean, make sure that it's idiot proof, and your data validation rules are in place, because this is what's going to power our next step, which is creating the visualizations. Now, if you're using Excel, or one of the things, the easiest things to do would be to use Excel's built-in graph builder function. And that can create graphs based upon the data in the Excel sheet. And that's fine. If you're comfortable with Excel, or you, for IT security reasons or whatever, can't use Google Sheets, then that's fine. You can create really cool dashboards in an Excel. You can even put them on a separate tab, and you can share that Excel. You can put it in a shared location, so that it updates in real time. And that's what I did for years until I made the switch to Google. You can also use different data visualization, like the standard, like I always think of Microsoft Power BI and Tableau. Those are the two that come to mind when I think of data visualization. There's another great options. I know Domo is great. It has a million connectors. But if you search, just Google search Tableau alternatives, you're going to get a list of 20 different data visualization suites out there that you can use with Google Sheets. So I'm going to show you the one that I know, which is a product called Google Data Studio. And it's in the same ecosystem as the Sheets, so it works very well. And let's make the switch over to that. So I already have a dashboard set up here, which I created ahead of time. And I want to start with this because I want to show you, it's called the Super Awesome Demo Dashboard, because I'm awesome at naming things. And this is, I'm going to scroll down here, this is what you can expect to be able to create from that Excel sheet. Something like this. You see I have breakdown by word counts, breakdown by spend, cumulative totals over time. I can create stacked bar graphs, pie charts. There's all sorts of different charts and graphs that I can visualize in here. The sky's kind of the limit. It's not as, I would say, powerful as Tableau or Power BI. It's much, I would say, more user-friendly. As is often the case with Google products. Maybe it's not the most powerful option out there, but it's more digestible, more easy to use, and syncs with more things, I would say. So this is what we can expect here. I have my graphs. If I go up to the top here, you see these are filters. So I can filter this data. If I want to see only the data for a certain time period, I can select that. Very powerful. I can see it by individual projects. All my Star Wars themed project names. And then I have pick card down here just to mess with you OCD Star Wars nerds. Language, I can look for a particular language. I can look for content type. So let's just check this out really quick. If I unselect UI, then it's going to only show me the marketing. So you see here, this graph is just solid marketing, because what this graph was showing was a breakdown between UI and marketing. So how do we create this? Well, we start with Data Studio. So let's open up, I'm just going to go right here. No, I'm going to go right here because I have a bookmark for it. And in here, you'll see all my old Data Studio projects, but I'm going to ignore all those. I'm going to ignore these templates. You can certainly use the templates if you like. and I'm going to start a blank report. We're going to start with a clean slate here. So I'm going to click this plus button right here. And forgive the loading times. I am streaming on multiple services and got all sorts of stuff. My poor Wi-Fi just doesn't know what to do. But that's okay. Okay, so I have a blank report here. I can name it webinar demo report. Sure, good enough. Over here, you see all of the data sources that I've created. These are for other projects that I've used. But I want to create a new data source. So I'm going to go down here to the very bottom and click this button that says Create New Data Source. And then I'm going to wait for it to load. As I said, it's moving a little slow today, kind of cranky. And I want to spend some time on this screen right here because this is really interesting to me. It's all of the different connectors, and this is one of the reasons I really like Data Studio, all of the different connectors that Data Studio supports. Now, of course, we're going to use this one down here, Google Sheets, because that's where our data is. But if you see here, we can connect to anything especially if your company's in the Google ecosystem. So like NIMSY uses Google behind the scenes to power everything, then this is extremely powerful. You see Google Analytics over here. If your company uses Google Analytics to track website visitors or conversions, you can sync to any data in Google Analytics, which if you know Google Analytics, you know there's a lot of data collected in Google Analytics. If you're running a YouTube channel and you want to use your analytics from YouTube, you can connect to that. And why is this important? Because this allows me, at my fingertips, I have access to all of this data. And as I said before, I don't want to go on data overload, but I want to use data that allows me to make better business decisions. So let's say I want to track the ROI on my latest email marketing campaign that I've localized into multiple languages. Then I can pull data from Google Analytics that shows me website visitors from local markets. I can pull data from MailChimp, if I use MailChimp, for my email campaigns to show subscriber rates, open rates, stuff like that. And I can pull data from my tracking sheets that show how much everything is costing. And I can actually get an ROI. I can see how much money I'm spending to localize a campaign into French and how many visitors that's getting me. What is the conversion rate on that? And if I assign particular values to conversions, then I can actually get a good ROI on that. So very cool. And I'm going to scroll down here because this isn't everything. This isn't all. I'm not, I can't talk about each one of these connectors. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about it. These ones are really cool. These are from a company called Supermetrics. It is a third-party connector, and it is paid on a subscription basis. So not everything in here is free, but what these do is it pulls information from social media. So I can track how my brand is doing online, my social brand, and see how that's doing compared to maybe my competitors. So very powerful. I've used that for a little bit, but then I didn't want to pay for it, so I stopped using it. Side note, Google Sheets also can scrape a lot of that data without a third-party connector, so I can scrape data directly in Google Sheets using fancy formulas. Complete tangent. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole right now, though. You know, it does play nice with Bing ads. So if you're a Microsoftie like I was, then don't be afraid of Google Data Studio. So all of these things here, this is very cool. So a lot of open source connectors down here on the bottom. And I can connect to any of these, and I can actually have multiple data sources tied to a single data dashboard if I so desire. The one that I've shown you and the one that we're going to build right now is only going to have one data source because that's what we have time for. So as I mentioned, for this, oh, and of course there's always the old-fashioned file upload. I can upload a CSV file. I used to use this when I was first learning Data Studio to train myself on it. But what I don't like about it is once the file is uploaded, you can't update the file anymore. So it's not real-time reporting, it's just creating graphs of data that you already have. So you're missing out on the big value add of Google Data Studio. Of course, we're going to use Google Sheets for this. One last comment though. In case I haven't clarified this before, Google Data Studio, this comes with a Google account. I'm logged in with my Nimdzi, Tucker at nimdzi.com, because that is a Google G Suite account. In the back, like I said, we use this G Suite in the back end here at Nimdzi. But you see I have, if I click over here, I have all my other accounts that I'm logged into here. My personal one. So if you have a Gmail account, if you have a Google account, you can access this. If you don't have a Google account, then you probably do have a Google account. One way or the other. If you sign into YouTube, if you have a YouTube account, you have a Google account. Google, it's ubiquitous. It's not just Gmail. It's Gmail, calendars, YouTube, Google Plus, and they're all linked together. So chances are you probably already have a Google account, even if you don't know it. All right, so enough gushing over all these cool connectors. I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to select Google Sheets. Select. And here it's going to show me all of my, I like this about the Google Sheets. It just shows me my recently worked on Google Sheets. So I can select which one I want. And then I select which tab I want to pull the data from. And I'm going to pull it from this filled out tab here. Use first rows as headers. Yes. Include hidden and filter cells. Yes, I want to do that because I do actually have some hidden cells in there that I will show you. And I hit connect up here in the corner. Now, this screen basically says, remember when I said machines are smart, but they're also kind of stupid? This is the machine, Google, saying, okay, here's the data that we saw and here's what we think it is. But I want to go through and modify this because it does a pretty good job of getting it right, but not always. So these green ones here are the different dimensions that are available. Dimensions are usually text-based fields, and they're the ways that we want to slice and dice the data. It doesn't actually contain numbers and values. It contains ways we want to slice and dice it. So things like project name, content type, language, these are all the dimensions. Now these blue ones are the metrics. And the metrics are the ones that contain values. And usually all I have to do in here is go and check the values to see if they're correct. Words is a number. I want that, the aggregation, I want it to be a sum because anytime I'm looking at the words, I want the total words. Rate, that's a number, but is it? It's actually a currency. So I'm going to change this number to currency, and I'm going to change it to USD down here. And once again, I'm going to change that to sum. It's running pretty slow. I apologize for that. See, the dates are dimensions. On time, number, yeah, I'll just leave that as a number, because if you remember, that was the column with just ones and zeros. Put it as a sum, though. And cost, oh, this is another currency, so we're going to change this to currency. US dollars. And sum. Cool. And cool. Now I'm going to add this to report. Now, one thing I can do, and I can always go back and change this stuff once I've actually added it to the report. That's fine. I can do that. It's just easier to do it on the front end. Now, I can also add fields here. Maybe I want to add calculated fields. So I want a field that says, you know, the cost over time, like how much am I spending per week? There's a fancy way to add fields here. That's definitely, well, I don't know how to do it very well. So that means to me, I would call it advanced. There might be people listening and say that's not advanced, that's easy. But it's a kind of a scripting language that I don't know how to speak. So I haven't learned that yet. I haven't taught myself yet. But going back to, am I intimidated by it? No. Going back to what we were saying earlier, there is a way to do this. All of this stuff is that I'm showing you today, no one showed me how to do. I self-taught. I got on Google and I said, Google, how do I do this? And I've learned it. So if I can do that, you can definitely do it too. For now, I'm just going to add this to report. Be respectful of time here. Add to report. It's going to think. And it's going to give me this beautiful blank canvas. And it has my data source over here. And up here in this row, I have all my different types of charts and graphs I can add. And I'm just going to start with the bar chart. I find that 90% of the time I'm using bar charts or I'm using pie charts, maybe line graphs if I'm showing something over time. And so I'm going to select bar chart and I'm going to drag that bar chart like that. And Google's going to guess what I want to see visualized in that bar chart. So it's going to select something. Let's see what it selected. Words and project, it looks like. So it's showing me word count by project. And you see that over here, if I select this graph, which is already selected, that over here is in the, that's what's selected over here. So I have date, range, dimension, dimension, project name, and metric is words. Now I can change this. I can, maybe I want to see it by content type. Maybe I want to see it by both. I can add 2 dimensions. So if I add 2 dimensions, let's see what that shows me. Oh, okay. So I have marketing over here, UI over here, and then I have each project is a different color. So that's kind of cool. Maybe I want to add that because that doesn't really make sense to me. Maybe I just want to show it by content type. So I can delete over here on the right. I can delete the project name, and then I just get marketing and UI. So very simple bar graph. I can also do pie charts. Always popular, the pie chart. I just click the pie chart and I drag what shape I want it to be. And here we go. So here we have, same thing, words. So this gives me the breakdown of words by project. So that's kind of cool. I'm just going to leave that there. Whoops. And now I want to show you, so I got my dashboards. They don't look pretty, but I can totally make them look pretty. I can select this here, and instead of on the data, I can go to style over here. I do apologize, it's going slow. It doesn't want to change the style. There we go. I can make it horizontal. I can change the colors. This is very important. If you have company branded colors, perhaps, you can actually get the exact colors. Like I can go in here and do a custom color, and I can make it any color I want because I know that wonderful NIMSY yellow is FFC000, and I got a NIMSY yellow bar graph there. So all sorts of different options in here. I can create titles for my graphs. If I go up here to this text field in the top, and just like with the graphs, I drag it, it creates a text box. So I can take this. Okay, I'm waiting for it. It doesn't want to create a text box. There we go. This is a bar graph. Once again, I can go over here and change the styles. I can center it. I can change the font size, make it super big, different colors, you name it. And once everything's on here, I can select things. I can move them around on my dashboard. I can change the size of the dashboard if I want it bigger, if I want it smaller. I can do all these different things, and it's really cool. You can really make a cool dashboard. I can. One thing I like here, if you want something that's really attractive, is you can add a picture. So image. This is great for adding company logos, for example. And I can select a file, and let's see where this takes me. I'll just add the first picture I can. Oh, it takes me to my little folder here. So let's just add this picture. You can pretend this is a company logo. And yeah, I can put that up there in the corner. And last thing I'm going to show you, because we're running short on time here, is this filter option here, right here. And I can create a filter. As soon as it loads, it's going to show me over here. It's project name, so I can filter by project name. I can create time filters, time series filters, like you saw. So really, this is how I created this sample dashboard that we started off with, which I'm going to bring back up here in a moment. Once it loads. So this sample dashboard that I created here is, which one is it? I think it's this one. The sample dashboard I created in a little under an hour. So that just shows you how simple this can become. Now, if it took me longer than that, there is a learning curve with Data Studio. I'm not going to lie to you. There is a learning curve. I spent a lot of time asking Google for favors and for help. But now it's to the point where I created this in under an hour, including formatting and everything. So that is the power of this. And if I was managing projects, I could share this with my vendors or my clients, and I can go right here to share this report. I can set permissions to see who has access to it. Do people outside of my company have access to it? If they have edit access or just view access. It says sharing is unavailable at this time. I wonder why. Trust me though, I can share it. I can get a link to it that I can send people, and when they click that link, they'll see this it'll bring up this page, and they can bookmark this and always have their data. The last thing I'm going to show you though is this embed option here, and I can embed this dashboard in pretty much anywhere that takes HTML, because it's just a basic iframe HTML code here. So I can set my dimensions, I can copy it to clipboard, and I'm going to go over to nimdzi.com here because I happen to manage this website, so I have access to it. And I'm going to put this on this page. This is the page. You're probably familiar with it. You registered from this page. I use a builder in WordPress to manage this website. So we could do it from the back end. I'm just going to do it from the builder here because that's easiest for me. And I'm going to, let's see here. I'm going to add a row here. What do I do? I'll just duplicate this row. Get rid of that. And just add a basic text, plain text field here. Basically anything that I can paste HTML into. And I'm going to paste this HTML in there. Done. I'm going to save that. And I'm going to close my builder here. So this is very useful if you're wanting to share your data in a very public way, or put it on a website somewhere that can be accessed by people. And as you can see here, now this is my live page. If you go back to the registration page for this right now, you will see the super awesome demo dashboard. And hopefully it will load quicker for you than it's loading for me, because you won't be streaming to multiple channels at the same time, sucking up your bandwidth. So this has been a very, very high level overview of, well, I hope not too high level overview. I think we got into the weeds a little bit. My intent wasn't to show you exactly how to do everything, but to show you what can be done. So with that, I want to go back here, transition time, and just cover like things that I want you to really take away from this, or that I hope you can take away what you want. I hope these are the things that you take away from this presentation. And firstly, project manager should be good with data. And in my experience, this is what separates the good PMs from the really good or the great PMs. I think I said that the other day on an info drop. And why? Because the machines are coming to take our jobs. Big, scary, that's what everyone's talking about, right? And not only do we need to know how to be better than the machines, we need to know how to work with the machines, whether we like it or not. And in order to work with the machines, we need to speak the language of the machines. And the language that the machines speak is data. So project managers need to know how to collect, maintain, and visualize data. They need to know how to translate meaningful stories from data that can be explained and understood by other human beings. And it's not, I feel confident. I don't think that should be a controversial statement. Project managers need to be good with data. Which means if you're a project manager, if you're an account manager, if you're anybody, learn how to use Excel, learn how to use Google Sheets, learn how to use something, Open Office, I don't know, but really understand some basic formulas. So like some if-then formulas, VLOOKUP, index formulas are awesome. Some ifs, all of these different formulas are going to help you really better understand your data. So at least learn how to use VLOOKUP and if formulas. Those are my two. I'm going to add if in there. And if you don't know how to do something, please, please, please take it from me. It can be done. Always. It can always be done. There is a way. Excel, Google Sheets, Google Data Studio, these are very powerful tools. They have a lot of features in them, and you might need to ask Google, or if you're a Microsoftie, ask Bing, right? How do I, blah, example formulas for, example VLOOKUP formulas, tutorials. There's all sorts of tutorials. There's all sorts of very, very smart, very nerdy people out there that spend their time writing tutorials on the internet to help people like you and to help people like me. That's how I learned it. I did not learn this in college. I did not learn this from my boss. I did not learn it from my coworker. I learned it from Google. Thank you, Google. So the last thing, most important, don't be a data-holic. Focus on data that's actually, and when I say data, I mean key performance indicators, KPIs. Track KPIs that are actually going to help you make better business decisions, or help your vendors make better business decisions, help your clients make better decisions. Don't track data just for the sake of tracking data. I've seen this happen so many times. People, and I've been guilty of it. I learned a fancy, cool new tool like Data Studio, and I'm infatuated with it, and I want to present all the data, all the time. And there's always a cost to tracking data and maintaining data. And whether that's a human input or someone having to write an automation or a script to pull that data. So really focus on the KPIs that are actually going to give you meaningful information about your business, about your program, about your project. And with that, I do believe we're out of time, which I was hoping to have some time for questions, but I don't think we do. It's 8:56 right now. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, if you're logging in on one of the platforms that supports comments or questions, then please, if you have any questions, please go ahead and leave them in the comments, and I will get back to those either in the comments myself. Maybe what we can do is do a follow-up video, like a comments response video. That could be fun. While you're there, if you're logging in from YouTube or from our Facebook page, please make sure to like and subscribe to our page. If you subscribe to our Facebook or our YouTube channel, you will get notifications of upcoming webinars, cool stuff that we put out there. And if I'm very passionate about this, just to close, I'm very passionate about this. If you're passionate about it too or want to talk more, I'm always down. My name is Tucker Johnson. My email address is tucker@nimsy.com. You can contact me at that email address. You can get me on Twitter, Fat Mother Tucker, Facebook, LinkedIn, you name it. Likewise with NIMSY, if you'd like more information about how NIMSY publishes research for the language services industry, how you can get access to that research, how you can get access to NIMSY's consulting packages, unlimited consulting packages, please shoot us an email at info@nimsy.com or visit our website, www.nimsy.com. So that's it for my gratuitous plugging. I'm going to let you go. I will end by saying thank you very much for joining us today. Our next webinar is going to be on July 25th. We're going to talk about part 2 of our 2-part series on soft skills for project managers, where I will be joined by my friend and colleague, Carolyn Lee from ISI Language Solutions. It's going to be great. Go over, register now, and I hope you found something useful from this webinar today. I hope to hear from you soon, and I thank you very much for your time. And with that, I'm signing off.